Welcome to Thrive in Design, a podcast about making money and beautiful interiors as it relates to product-based businesses in the interior design industry. Each week, we'll discuss innovative strategies on how to approach product development and design sales in a shifting market. I'm your host, Nicole Lachey Ben. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another live stream that we have going here on LinkedIn. And I'm super excited. My name is Nicole Lachey Hall, and I'm the CEO and founder of Thrive in Design. Thrive in Design is not only a podcast that's available on all streaming platforms where we talk about everything from product development to go-to-market strategies for products in the interior design industry and everything in between. But we are also a boutique consultancy where we help interior product brands with their product launches and podcast production. So I'm super excited because we have been doing a little mini series over the last couple of months. We started back in, I believe, April with a Road to NeoCon series where we were doing one live stream per month leading up to NeoCon with different people, experts, and thought leaders from the industry of what they were doing to prepare for NeoCon. We talked to people from Momentum Textiles and learned more about their product development and their sales strategy and how they were going to successfully launch a new product collection at NeoCon. We talked to the founder of Network Next Gen, and we talked everything of what millennials and Gen Zs want in terms of connecting with manufacturers. That is a little bit outside of the box. That's both at NeoCon and beyond. And then I also had a solo session where we talked about podcasting and the strategy behind that. Now, of course, NeoCon has come and gone. It was a couple of weeks ago. And I don't know about you, but I know that I am still recovering. But the cool thing about NeoCon is that it leaves so much inspiration in terms of like go-to-market strategies, what new products are out there, how things are shifting in our industry, both in workplace, healthcare, in different design segments. And I know a lot of people that I've been talking to have been just talking about the takeaways that they've had from NeoCon and not just the fun that, of course, was had there. So today we're going to do a little bit of a recap of NeoCon, what we took away, what is next, and what we were inspired by. And I have a special guest to talk about these topics with. And before I introduce her, I want to share a couple of things with you that we have going on at Thrive in Design this summer. So as I mentioned to you before, Thrive in Design is more than just a podcast, more than just content that we're sharing on the internet. But as we help more and more design-driven brands increase their brand awareness, one of the things that people have been coming to us over and over again is, how can we use your strategies for our business? The first thing that we've been hearing over and over again is around podcasting, which is why I actually talked about podcasting at NeoCon this year. But in tangent with NeoCon, we actually launched our course platform, School of Strategy, which is in beta right now. And we have one amazing course that's available over there called Podcasting for Design-Driven Brands. So if you are a designer, if you are an interior product manufacturer, or just design adjacent in our industry, and you're looking to launch your own podcast, but you're thinking about doing a DIY because you're not quite ready to hire a production team to bring it to life, then there is a course for you over on School of Strategy. And over the next year or so, there will be some amazing new courses dropped in there. So keep an eye out for that information. And everything is available at thriveindesign.co/school. The other thing that I want you to be aware of that we have happening at Thrive in Design is season 8 of our podcast. So I can't believe that we are actually coming up on season 8 of the podcast, thousands of downloads later, it being streamed in multiple countries around the world. I'm super excited about the podcast coming out this season. And if you did not catch all of the Road to NeoCon series, or you want to re-listen to what we're about to talk about today, that will also be available on season 8. So make sure that you head to podcast.thriveindesign.co so that you can join our mailing list and be the first to know when those episodes air. But without further ado, let's get into the topic that we are here to talk about today. We have a very special guest who has been a guest on the Thrive in Design podcast before, Joining us is Melissa Marsh, founder and executive director of PLASTARC, and a visionary in workplace strategy, change management, and the future of work. Melissa has been at the forefront of reshaping how we think about space, connection, and experience, making her the perfect guest to help us unpack the major themes that emerged from this year's NeoCon show. So today we'll cover key takeaways from NeoCon, the evolving role of workplace design post-hybrid world, insights into change management and organizational culture shifts, and we'll just share some of our favorite things that we've talked about that we saw at NeoCon. So I would love to welcome to the stage Melissa.
Hello, hello. It is a pleasure to be here, and I am so excited to be on stage for the road back from NeoCon because there's so much more to talk about than when I was prepping and stressing out about NeoCon. So delighted to be here. And it was also fun to see you on stage when we were together at NeoCon with that great program hosted by Work Design. So great to see you again.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you here. Yes, I can totally relate. Prepping for NeoCon was a lot different this year, especially with having that NeoCon talk. Typically, I'm just like, let's go have some fun and let's go explore. But it was a whole different game this year, but it was super fun still. All right. So, Melissa, I know that you had a few days at NeoCon this year, and you've been to NeoCon a few times as well as for me. And it was very different. I felt like the energy just was different in the building of the Mart this year than it was last year. And I would love to hear like your high level overview of like what you felt the vibe was this year and some overarching themes that you noticed when it came to product design specifically.
Yeah, you said unpack earlier, so I think that's a great idea. I can throw my cards out on the table and say what some of the things are that I saw, and then we can dig in some more shortly thereafter. So one was simply the weather. Sometimes it's so hot in Chicago that we're all, sunk into the Mart to take advantage of the air conditioning. And this was great weather in Chicago. So a nice opportunity and even an opportunity to move back and forth between the Mart space and the Design Days space in Fulton Market across the river there. So that was definitely part of the experience. I would say last year seemed to be all about hybrid, hybrid, hybrid. You couldn't get over this word of how we blend technology and bring people into the office from outside and vice versa. And one of the things I thought the shift was this year was more to a focus on acoustics in the workplace. We saw a ton of products, materials, things that were really about everything from the felt and the materials for sound absorption. Some of them I would say were maybe even over the top, because if you can have earphones that are this big, why do you need, a 12 by 12 felt environment? But, we can talk more about that later. I thought it was interesting. Last year, we saw bringing the outside in. We saw nature in the work environment. And this year, we saw bringing the inside out. And so finding ways to actually work outside. I saw some great demonstrations of furniture built for working outdoors, but even with like plugins and Wi-Fi boosters and shade, things that I'm trying to demonstrate right here in this environment this afternoon. And then another thing we saw, I would describe it as placeful and playful. So placeful really meaning that people don't want to have the same design experience everywhere they go in the world. Boston should feel different from Shanghai, should feel different from San Francisco, should feel different from Austin. And so ways to kind of bring that individuality into an experience. We always see playfulness at NeoCon. It's one of the only places I get to see actual children's furniture and things that are built for the schoolyard. But I also was thinking, and I know this was one of your points, about the psychological safety net and the things that are in this space that are reminding us that we are in a safe place, that we're in a communal place. And so I saw an added element to that playfulness, because in order to be creative, in order to do our best work, we also need to feel safe in a place. And then it was great to, as I mentioned, share the stage with you, where you were talking about some of the great work at Thrive. And I was on stage with our colleague, Nuna Becek of Logitech. And we were talking about using artificial intelligence to make the workplace a better experience. So maybe I'm projecting a little bit, but those are the things that I saw this year.
Oh my gosh, there's so many things there that I want to dive deeper into. But I think the first thing I want to talk about is AI. One of my favorite topics. One, AI has been ever growing, of course, over the last couple of years. The interior design industry, I think, is still a little bit slower to embrace AI in a lot of different facets. I'm also quite like an adapter of AI. I use probably 5 AI tools per day, but I also have this like a little bit of fear creeping up in me because I think about, especially when it comes to like AI tools that are assisting in productivity, how many servers there are out in the world that are, creating all of this heat, using water and all the things. So we can probably spend like an hour just talking about AI, but I want to hear from your perspective of like which lane of AI you're actually talking about and how it has shifted even from last year into this year and how you see the trajectory going forward in the next couple of months.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nicole. And I do want to give you a shout out because being a technophile in so many ways, being a MIT alum, I sometimes question myself and think we shouldn't be talking about AI or like, I don't really do that kind of AI. We just,
Right.
we're poodling around with these other things. And your encouragement over a year ago to do the podcast where we talked about AI was really great because it kind of made me realize that there's a lot more that we're doing and thinking about in this capacity than I was sort of giving us credit for. So I think one thing that is different for our approach is that a lot of folks are talking about using AI to produce design work. I actually teach at NJIT. I'm teaching students about how they're using AI in their work. But our focus when we were at NeoCon was more thinking about the way AI is doing real-time data processing in order to make the workplace experience different. So, for example, a building entry experience, you walk through and you swipe your badge and you're into the building. That's a generic security experience. But an experience that might say, hello, welcome, Nicole. Your friend Melissa's in the office today. Do y'all want to catch up over lunch? That's an AI-enabled workplace experience. And so we were really talking, our conversation was titled, Are Your Walls Talking to You? Is your furniture talking to you? There's also so much visual and audio processing that's going on. We were talking about this product that is using the video system to see what is going on in the space and then augmenting the acoustic experience so that you can actually have a collaborative hybrid experience in an open setting because the sound isn't being blasted to everyone else in the area. It's just being presented back to the people who are also in the video frame. So pairing that audio and video experience, that can really only be done when there's AI working in the background, again, to augment that experience. I have a friend who's, playing with these Meta glasses and was traveling for the Venice Biennale, where there's people all over the world and speaking all different languages. And, it's one thing if you can translate in one direction, but then once you have two people that both have glasses with an audio experience, then you can be literally, I'm speaking my language, you're hearing yours, you're speaking your language, I'm hearing mine. So we're talking about those kinds of things changing the workplace experience. We're talking less about, I'm sitting at my desk and I'm running 600 iterations of a thermal model because I'm using AI to inform the design solution. But PLASTARC is very interested in both of those components. We're just pushing harder now on how we're using AI to make a different sort of in-office experience. Or out of office experience.
And I love that because most of the time when people are thinking about AI, they're just like, okay, I'm just going to use these tools to be more productive, to come up with different iterations, maybe do some research for me so then I can take that to the next step. Whether they are a designer or manufacturer, etc., in their design process, products, interiors, etc. So I don't know that a lot of people are thinking about how AI can be aiding the experience in the way that you just explained, which is kind of like, it reminds me of this show, which is going to sound crazy, that I remember that I watched on the Disney Channel when I was a kid. Well, it was like Smart House or something like that. And the house had all of these different technologies that became smarter and smarter and smarter to the point where like the house had a whole personality and then it took over and they had to shut the house down. But but I like where these experiences are going because it does aid in relationship building, like the example that you just said of like, oh, your friend is in the office, you guys want to catch up. That relationship building can happen, or you guys can collaborate on whatever project that you need to collaborate on, which is super helpful, especially in in-person interactions. I know for me, my team is completely remote. So, but if we did have an office space, that would be wonderful so that we can spark a conversation and connection in person. Or just like that audio and video in tandem working together, like that is amazing and could be integrated into like lots of acoustical products. I could see that happening in terms of like what you saw at NeoCon and how acoustics are growing. How do you incorporate that technology with acoustical products and then inform the designer of why it's important to incorporate technology like that? So I love that you're looking at AI from that perspective in terms of how do we improve the workplace or even any other type of built environment with more human connection, more unique, personalized experiences into like what we're doing right now and what we're trying to accomplish. That's really great. And I hope that more people like start to learn more about all of the different options that are out there for them to adopt.
Yeah, I do have one thing to add to that, where there's maybe an intersection between the work we do as designers and some of these new capabilities. One is, what Logitech and our team have been talking a lot about, which is that there's ways that we plan into the space, how people and technology will work together in the future, and that needs to be kind of built in from the beginning. So we can't like wait and do the technology design later. That's one piece. Another is that in a traditional office environment, we might have spent so much time as designers trying to figure out adjacencies and who should sit next to who and what should go where. And now we can make that dynamic and use AI to solve some of those mind-bending problems by having a whole different set of design criteria.
Yep.
So there are some intersections between the two. And I also want to amplify two things that I heard you say. I'm not sure if we're going to go on to another topic here, but I think you mentioned user control and, kind of feeling safe with using AI. And I think that comes down to transparency and giving people choice and control over the tools that they use. I think that's so important. And we should never talk about AI or even video conferencing without talking about the energy impact of these decisions. So even just all the processing that's going into this experience right now, we could have probably driven and seen each other in person. So I just want to, really be careful of assuming that the digital solution is the sustainable solution and make sure that we're holding those in pair.
Yeah, we can go on so many tangents right there. But one, in terms of what you just said, in terms of like programming, that just brought back a memory for me from design school, from my like workplace design. And as a designer, you learn about just programming, especially for workplace of like, okay, this is how many employees are working in this workplace. These are their departments. This is who needs to be near who, how many desks you need, how many conference rooms, etc. in terms of programming. And the mind bend of that problem solving, I can't even imagine how much easier it would be with AI now. Of course, I'm not doing that work specifically, but I look forward to seeing like how that like different AI tools even come into education to teach young designers, okay, here's how we can program this workplace, or seeing how that transitions into workplace design. And then two, to piggyback off of what you just said, like, yes, the environmental impact, sustainability, which goes into one of my points about sustainability when it comes to things at NeoCon. So sustainability has been this big buzzword for like decades now. We went through a lot of like greenwashing of like what that term actually means. People were just like, oh yes, we're going green, or people started getting LEED certifications or trying their best to build towards like LEED standards. But when it comes to sustainability, whether that's AI or the actual product, I saw like one brand do it really well at NeoCon. I don't know about you, Melissa. And it was Meyer Fabrics. And they were very subtle with their product launch, but they had a new product that came out and it was a vinyl upholstery fabric that was biodegradable based on the treatment that they put on this fabric. Like after 2 years of it being in the landfill, it will be completely gone. And that was like the only product that stood out to me where I'm like, wow, this is something that's truly innovative in terms of sustainability. And it took them a long time. They told me it took them 8 years to actually develop this product. But in terms of sustainability, product specific, not AI specific, did you see anything at NeoCon that stood out to you?
So I did also see that same product. I think it's fascinating the way we're using biomimicry and really digging deeper into physics, material science, chemistry. There's been for a while the materials made out of mushrooms. So like, are the fungi driving the ship? And so, I think that we talk a lot about how, maybe the design and construction industry gets some of this science last, right? So aeronautics gets hit first, and then automobiles, and then, 6 other industries, and then design and construction in the built world. So I think it's fun to see that speeding up. I've mentioned I mentor with a program called Design X out of MIT. We're coming up on our 10th year of having teams that are bringing innovative ideas, everything from coffee leather to apps for punch listing to parking sensor meters that, determine how long you've been in a space and charge you like an easy pass kind of thing. So it's really exciting to see the technology meaning like innovation, invention coming in. I would say my take on the sustainability at NeoCon this year was this shift I think that we see across the industry, which is that sustainability is the baseline. And maybe we're talking about it less because it's such a significant expectation that we don't even need to talk about it anymore, hopefully. And that the expectation is shifting up to circularity. Meaning, so in one of the, anchor points of sustainability might be recycling. But invariably, recycling is actually downcycling. You're taking something that used to be one thing and you're making it generally into a less valuable thing in the future. And so things that might be more a take back program or something that might even be upcycling. And I've just been reading William McDonough's Cradle to Cradle. I think it's celebrating its 20th or more than 20 years since that was published. And in rereading it, one of the things that I've been reminded of is that these circularity elements begin at the pre-manufacturing step. It is about design, and it's about building and designing something to have a different end of life condition. You can't start planning end of life at the end of life. That for materials, that is for furniture, that is for retirement planning. It's a life lesson. You can't start planning end of life at end of life. So I think that shift from sustainability to circularity is one of the things that I'm seeing alongside, as you said, the material invention and innovation. And I think that Metropolis Sandow space is really standout. To my point about playfulness, it's great to see that space is set up like a children's museum and you get to play with like the pelletized materials. And it's really bringing out that opportunity to invent is really valuable. Maybe one connect back to our time on stage with Logitech. One of the things that I learned from them was that one of the favorite colors of many of our technology products is white. But once you have color in a plastic, you can't bleach it out like you could in another kind of material. So they've actually invented a way to get color back out of plastic so that you can do plastic recycling and then also still have light color product designs. So yeah, so much work and invention going on.
Yeah, that makes me want to reread Cradle to Cradle. That was definitely one of my readings in interior design school, and it's still on my bookshelf. And even that book, the manufacturing of that book was always so impressive to me because it's waterproof. I don't know about your copy, but mine is
You have an original edition.
Oh, I do?
You definitely need to hold on to those because those are so special. And I'm not sure that they have continued to be produced. I'm not sure if they did a second run that's on comparable materials, but you definitely have the first edition. And then when I had to get it again, I got it on audio copy. So that's...
Oh, man. Well, that's the flow. Like, if I ever want to sell it on eBay, it might be worth something. But I'm going to hold on to it for sure and definitely reread it. Are you ready to turn your ideas into impact and your strategy into sales? Then you need to check out School of Strategy by Thrive and Design. Whether you're launching a product, starting a podcast, or looking to finally cut through the noise, these courses are built just for design-driven brands like yours. Inside, you'll find actionable lessons, guided frameworks, and insider insights that I've used with top interior product manufacturers and creative entrepreneurs. No fluff, just strategy that works. Enroll today at thriveanddesign.co/school and start building the brand presence you've always envisioned. Okay, so let's get into a couple of other things that I thought were very interesting that you said that you noticed as well. And those were placeful and playful. And placeful really stood out to me. Most of the time at Thrive and Design, the clients that I work with are usually like focused on building their sales in like the hospitality industry and or residential, and especially hospitality, especially when it comes to like big name brands. A lot of the brands can look the same from location to location. That goes for hospitality, that goes for like retail experiences. They come up with these brand standards and they're like, this is what our brand looks like. Let's put it in Baltimore, New York, Miami, wherever. It does not matter. When you walk through those doors, you know you're in that brand. But what I find really interesting is that some other design segments have a little bit more flexibility with what they can do. Sometimes in hospitality, you have a boutique hotel that could be a little bit more mindful of the environment around the location so that they can make it very unique. But let's talk about like placeful. What does that mean to you and how did you see it show up at NeoCon in various ways?
Yeah, so placeful, as I mentioned, is really distinct place. It's unique, drawing out something out a location. Some of the ways I saw that at NeoCon was literally just the "you are here" element.
Yeah.
Another was, different ways that I think are pulling on these return to office strings, like what's going to get people back, what's going to make this unique and interesting, where maybe NeoCon last year was like step and repeat and sort of more infotainment things. And this year seemed to be like leaning in further to the why come here and what makes this a different kind of experience. And I'm maybe going to pull it back to AI as well, which is, it is hard to have something that is both standard and unique, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every organization, just like every, consumer brand, you want your Coca-Cola to be the same color and the same flavor in every bottle, right? Like you don't, but when you sit down and you have that in Mexico or in New Mexico, then the different experience is going to be around you. And so we were talking about how hard it is to think about all of the variables in making a great experience in the office, like adjacency and who sits next to who. I think that we actually have more opportunities now than ever before to have a brand standard that defines one set of things and then a parametric logic that says kind of if this, then that, and allows you also to amplify a bunch of things to make that environment more personalized, a more intense experience, and a more place-specific experience. So yeah, other ways that was coming across at NeoCon, I mean, maybe even just the fact that NeoCon is in two different places, or, NeoCon and Design Days are in two different places. And those different places are so different. One is inside a really cool old school building, very industrial in some ways, but not in other ways. And then, the Design Days is sort of that turned inside out. It's Fulton Market. It's a street. It's congested traffic. It's the good and the bad of all of that. So yeah, maybe that's just happenstance and something to pull on. Like I said, I may very well have been projecting on that, but I feel like it's an important thing to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. And I think even if it was like unintentional placefulness, it's still worth like calling out what that experience is. But I think also like playfulness, like going back to the experience of just the NeoCon in itself. It's happening at the Mart. It's happening at Fulton Market. I think a little bit of playfulness even came into that on like how you actually get to the locations. This year, I didn't know this last year. They maybe had the same thing, but they had like people on those like bike trolleys that you can like hop on and they'll take you over to design days and back and forth, which I thought was like super playful. Who doesn't want to hop on the back of that and on a beautiful day in Chicago, like with some of your besties at NeoCon to experience all of these technologies and information and what have you in the two different locations. So I love how that came about.
Like I said, the weather definitely helped. And it's another point that we're talking about. We might talk about it again in the future, but the sort of digitization of the entire city. And if we think about like pre-2020, we weren't ordering food from a car service. We weren't using an app to buy a drink. We didn't have cities full of e-bikes and e-scooters and these things. And so our cities have really changed through how many layers of digitization and digital support are making these things possible. I mean, even getting an Uber or Lyft quickly back and forth between those two locations alongside the buses. I actually have a complaint about Chicago because I don't think that their e-scooter system is restricted, so you can't go in and out of the city center. But I think it's another way that we're seeing that intersection of technology and place experience. Exactly, as you say, how you get back and forth between these two locations.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how things continue to evolve. Like, as somebody who has experienced a cassette player that I used to hold in my hand versus just like playing things on my phone, just that using that analogy is just like the evolution of technology in my own personal life. I just look forward to seeing how technology continues to advance, how AI tools continue to advance, and how it's all integrated into our experiences, both outside and in the built environment. So anyway, we've touched on a whole lot of things that we saw at NeoCon today, and I'm super excited about the continuous evolution. But let's touch on one fun thing. We always go to NeoCon for the free stuff, Melissa. And you told me that you found your favorite bag. So go ahead and shout it out.
Okay, I have a favorite bag every year, and I have to say that Buzzy Space rocked it this year, connecting a couple different things you wanted to talk about today. You had a question that you didn't ask, which is cool colors versus warm colors. Yeah. We've been talking about collaboration. I love warm colors. I've got the orange. I now have my pink Buzzy Space bag. There were a lot of cool colors this year, which tend to be focused with concentration. So like kind of representing this shift from the warm and the buzzy collaboration to the concentration, the heads down. Of course, in our real environments, we need to all have the same stuff. So wanted to give a shout out to that. And yeah, really amplifying the color element and the acoustic charge that we have at NeoCon this year.
Yes, I love that. And yes, before we close out, I do want to highlight that because one thing that I noticed was all of like the cooler colors and jewel tones, especially in the textiles that were shown, whether that be just textiles used in general or textiles on the furniture. And I saw it in every space. There was like cool and jewel tones everywhere. And I'm glad that you pointed that out, that it has a connection to concentration, because I didn't even know that. I just noticed like, somebody might be onto something at all of these different manufacturers. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about the trees in the background here. You've got the cool, you've got the emerald, you've got, the sapphire of water. So much of nature is these, we think of neutral tones, but really it is a lot of these cool tones. And so those tend to be more relaxing, more focus oriented. And then you think about what in nature is bright colored, things that will either hurt you or berries and things that you really want to remember where to find them. So the bright colors are more stimulating, and they also have a different relationship to our memory. But yeah, interesting to see these different things being played out, and you won't forget where you saw this.
I know. I wish I would have got that bag. It just slipped my mind.
I'm sure once this podcast goes live, someone will find a way to get you one.
Yes, I hope so. Cross my fingers. Busy space, if you're watching this, please send me one of your leftover bags. But anyway, Melissa, as always, it has been a pleasure catching up with you and chatting with you about all types of topics. Anything that you would like to shout out? with PLASTARC before we hop off?
Yeah, I know you're always good at helping us shout out, and you asked, how people can get in touch with us. And I want to confess, we've gone old school. We're not doing as much Twitter X. We definitely keep up with LinkedIn, but our cornerstone piece is our newsletter that goes out to over 12,000 subscribers. It's only monthly, so you can savor it. It comes out on a Sunday, so you can read it in personal time or in business time. And that's really something that we put our heart and soul into, and is continually expressing the things that we think are important, not just in work and the placemaking world, but also in work-life balance, and making sure as your organization advocates that we're thriving in the built world and in our industry.
Yes, you're going to be thriving in design at all times. Well, thank you again, Melissa, and thank you guys for tuning in today. Thanks for joining us this week on Thrive in Design. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Thrive in Design. And for more strategies on how your product company can innovate in the interior design industry, head to training.thriveindesign.co. As always, subscribe to the show to catch every new episode, and leave us a review so we can continue to create captivating content. See you next week.